Let me ask you something, and I want you to actually sit with this for a second before you answer. When was the last time you looked at your phone and scrolled through your contacts, not to call anyone, just scrolled, and felt this strange, quiet weight settle over you? Because somewhere between that list of names and the actual people in your life right now, something shifted. There are people in that list you used to talk to every single day. People who knew your laugh, who knew which fast food order was yours without asking, who you called at midnight over nothing, and now they're just names. And the strange part, you're not even sure when it happened. You didn't have a fight, you didn't make a decision, things just got quieter and quieter until the silence became the default. We live in a world that celebrates connection. More friends, more followers, more people in your corner. Every app is built to make you feel like you need a bigger circle. Every motivational post tells you to invest in your relationships and show up for your people. And somewhere underneath all that noise, there's a completely different story playing out for millions of people. A story nobody talks about out loud. The story of the friendships you quietly let go. The group chats you stopped answering, the invitations you started declining, the people you used to know who are now just a name on a screen you haven't opened in 8 months. And here's what's strange. Here's the part that actually surprised me when I started researching this. Most of the people who do this don't feel guilty anymore. They did, at first. But somewhere along the way, that guilt just faded. And what replaced it wasn't loneliness. What replaced it was something that felt, honestly, a lot like relief. So today, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the psychology behind why some of us pull back from friendships, not out of bitterness, not out of some dramatic fallout, but quietly, deliberately, or sometimes without even realizing it. And I want to break down the 4 different types of people who do this, because the reason matters. The reason changes everything. But before we get there, I need to share something with you, because this isn't just an opinion. Oxford University ran a study. They tracked over 3 million people across years. 3 million. And what they found was this. Social circles reliably start shrinking after the age of 25. Not because people become antisocial. Not because life gets too busy, though it does. But because something quietly changes in how we see other people. And more importantly, how we see ourselves in relation to them. Your circle shrinking isn't a glitch. It isn't a failure. According to the data, it's actually what's supposed to happen. The question, the one that matters, is why it's happening for you. Because there is a version of this that's healthy, that's intentional, that's even wise. And there's a version of this that's just isolation dressed up as self-awareness. And most people can't tell the difference. So let's talk about the first type. The first type is someone I call the gatekeeper. And I want you to understand something about the gatekeeper before you judge them, because the word sounds harsh. It sounds like someone standing at a velvet rope deciding who's worthy. But that's not quite it. The gatekeeper isn't cruel. The gatekeeper isn't cold. The gatekeeper is just someone who, at some point in their life, got very, very honest with themselves. And that honesty started with a question most of us never ask out loud. How do I actually feel after I spend time with this person? Not during, after. Because during, you're laughing, you're catching up, you're doing all the things you're supposed to do. But after, when you're driving home or lying in bed that night or waking up the next morning, how do you feel? Energized? Like you're a better version of yourself? Or depleted? Small? Like something was quietly taken from you that you can't quite name? The gatekeeper started paying attention to that feeling. And once you start paying attention to it, you cannot stop. You notice the friend who calls you every time their life falls apart, but is mysteriously unavailable when yours does. You notice the one who takes your ideas, your energy, your enthusiasm, and never quite gives any of it back. You notice the group that, no matter how good the night is, always leaves you feeling like you are performing a version of yourself rather than actually being yourself. And the gatekeeper doesn't explode. They don't send the long text message. They don't confront. They don't make it dramatic. They just quietly stop. Stop initiating. Stop being the one who sends the "we should hang" message. Stop manufacturing effort for a connection that was never truly feeding them. Stanford psychologist Laura Carstensen has spent decades studying this. She calls it socio-emotional selectivity theory. The core idea is that as we move through life and gain more self-awareness, We become sharper, genuinely sharper, at distinguishing between relationships that energize us and relationships that drain us. And we start, sometimes unconsciously, filtering accordingly. The gatekeeper isn't doing something unusual. They're doing something that the research says is actually a sign of emotional maturity. They're choosing quality over quantity. They're choosing their own peace over social obligation. They are done, completely done, pretending that every relationship from their past deserves equal access to their present. Now here's where it gets interesting, because not far from the gatekeeper, but with a completely different internal experience, is the second type, and I call this one the watcher. The watcher didn't sit down and make a deliberate choice. The watcher ran an experiment, a quiet, private, deeply revealing experiment, and it started with one small change in behavior. They stopped reaching out first. That's it. That's the whole experiment. Because the watcher had spent months, or years, or sometimes their entire adult life being the one. You know what I mean. The one who texts first, the one who makes the plans, the one who remembers the birthday and sends the voice note and checks in after the hard week, the one who, if they're being honest with themselves, was basically running the friendship on their own energy. And one day, not dramatically, not with any particular intention, they just stopped. Maybe they were tired, maybe they were busy, maybe they just needed a break from being the one, but they stopped. And they watched. And what they saw answered every question they'd been carrying. Because the people who showed up, the ones who noticed, who reached out, who said, "Hey, I haven't heard from you. Is everything okay?" Those people revealed themselves as something real. They were actually in it. But the others, the ones who didn't notice, the ones for whom the silence was apparently indistinguishable from normal, what the watcher realized, slowly, quietly, a little painfully, was that those friendships hadn't really been friendships at all. They had been performances, maintained by the watcher's effort alone. And when the effort stopped, there was nothing underneath. Just air. Sociologist Gerald Mollenhorst at Utrecht University studied friendship turnover across 7 years and found something remarkable. We replace approximately half of our close friends every 7 years, not because of conflict, not because of betrayal, simply because the invisible labor of maintaining those friendships was concentrated in one person, and when that person stopped, the relationship quietly dissolved. The watcher didn't cut those people off. The watcher just stopped being the life support, and what couldn't breathe on its own stopped breathing. And here's the thing about the watcher that I think is profound. They didn't lose those friendships. They discovered the truth about them, and knowing the truth, even when the truth hurts, is always better than spending your energy maintaining a beautiful illusion. But then there's a third type, and this one is the one I think most people don't talk about because it's the hardest to admit without sounding arrogant. Because this one isn't about other people being bad for you. It isn't about imbalance or exploitation or someone taking more than they give. This one is simply about growth. And the third type is someone I call the changed one. The changed one didn't cut anyone out. The changed one didn't even notice for a long time what was happening. They were just living, changing, becoming someone new. And one day they looked back and realized the friendships that used to feel like home now felt like rooms they didn't quite fit in anymore. The conversations that used to energize them now felt like going through motions. The jokes that used to land now felt hollow, not because anyone changed in a bad way, but because the changed one had shifted. Their values had deepened. Their priorities had reoriented. Their sense of self had expanded into territory those friendships had never visited. Think about it. You are not the same person you were 10 years ago. You're not even the same person you were 3 years ago if you've been doing any real work on yourself. And the friends you made when you were that older version of yourself, they knew that person. They loved that person. But do they know who you're becoming? Can they meet you where you are now? Sometimes yes. Sometimes the best friendships in your life are the ones that grow with you, that stretch, that make room for every version of you. But sometimes, and this is the part that nobody wants to say out loud, sometimes a friendship is deeply, beautifully, genuinely rooted in who you used to be. And trying to force it forward into who you're becoming isn't loyalty, it's dishonesty. To yourself, and honestly, to them. Psychologists call this identity evolution. It's the documented, well-researched process by which our self-concept shifts as we develop, and our social networks naturally reorganize around our new identity. It happens in every life transition, leaving a religion, recovering from addiction, building a business, becoming a parent, surviving grief, leaving a toxic relationship. Anytime you fundamentally change the way you see yourself in the world, your relationships have to reconfigure. Not because other people aren't good people, but because growth is not a group project, and some of the most important things about who you're becoming simply belong to you. The changed one isn't cold. They're not abandoning people. They're just honest enough to know that not everything from your past was meant to follow you into your future. And there is something deeply respectful about letting someone go when you know the version of you they love no longer exists, rather than showing up as a hollow echo of yourself, performing an old identity for their comfort. And then there's the fourth type. And this one I find almost funny in its clarity, because unlike the gatekeeper or the watcher or the changed one, this person didn't have an emotional revelation or run a quiet experiment or go through a period of identity transformation. This person just did some math, and the math changed everything. I call this one the realist. The realist encountered at some point the work of Oxford anthropologist Robin Dunbar. You've probably heard of Dunbar's number, the idea that the human brain, specifically the neocortex, can comfortably maintain stable social relationships with roughly 150 people. But here's the part people skip over. Within that 150, there's a much smaller inner circle, the people who truly know you, the people you call when something actually happens. Dunbar's research suggests that number is around 5. Not 15, not 20. 5 genuinely close, deeply invested, mutually nourishing relationships. And the realist sat with that number, 5. And then they counted the people in their life to whom they were giving deep friendship energy. And the number was not 5. The number was 23. It was 30. It was this exhausting, sprawling web of people they were trying to stay current with, check in on, show up for, remember things about. And they were stretched so thin across all of it that nobody, not one single person in that web, was actually getting the real version of them. Everyone was getting a distracted, half-present, slightly too tired version. A version that remembered to like the post but forgot the conversation behind it. There's also research, genuinely fascinating research, showing that it takes approximately 200 hours of shared experience to build a truly close friendship. 200 hours. That's not texting. That's not reacting to someone's story. That's long drives and late nights and sitting with someone in their actual life. 200 hours of real, present, invested time. And the realist looked at that number and made a choice, not who to cut, but who to truly, actually, fully keep. Who deserves those 200 hours? Who is getting the real version of them? And they stopped spreading themselves thin across 30 surface-level connections and started going deep with 5. And something strange happened. Their circle got smaller, significantly smaller. The notifications got quieter. The social calendar got emptier. And for the first time in a long time, the friendships they did have felt like something solid, something real, something they could actually lean on when it mattered. The realist circle shrank, and what it lost in size, it more than made up for in substance. Now here's what all 4 of these types have in common. And I think this is the thing, the actual insight, that most people never reach. All 4 of them stop treating friendship as an obligation. That's the shift. That's the whole thing. At some point, we are taught, by culture, by family, by years of social conditioning, that friendship is a duty, that you maintain it because it exists, that you show up because you used to show up, that you keep someone in your life because the history demands it, because it would feel wrong not to, because the guilt of pulling back is worse than the cost of staying, and for a long time most of us live inside that story. We stay in friendships we've outgrown because leaving feels like a betrayal. We maintain connections that drain us because cutting them off feels cruel. We carry other people's weight in relationships because putting it down feels like abandonment. But the gatekeeper, the watcher, the changed one, and the realist, they all arrived through completely different paths at the same truth. Friendship isn't an obligation, it's an investment, it's a living thing, and living things cannot be maintained through guilt and history alone. They need to be actually nourishing both people. They need to make both people more themselves, not less. They need to be chosen, genuinely, freely, consciously chosen, not simply inherited from a version of you that no longer exists. Your shrinking circle isn't a sign that you're bad at relationships. It isn't a sign that you're getting colder or more isolated or that something is wrong with you. The research says consistently across multiple disciplines, across decades of social science, that it is a sign of maturity, that it is a sign that you are finally taking your own time and energy and emotional well-being seriously enough to protect it. That you understand on some level that the people closest to you deserve the real version of you, not the depleted, overstretched, obligation-driven version that shows up when you haven't made any choices at all. So I want to ask you, and I want you to actually answer this either in the comments or just in your own head, because I think it matters. Which one are you? Are you the gatekeeper, the one who made a quiet, deliberate decision about who gets access to your life and your energy? Are you the watcher, the one who stepped back, went silent, and let the truth of the relationship reveal itself? Are you the changed one, the one who grew in a direction that some of your old friendships simply couldn't follow, not because anyone failed, but because growth isn't always a shared journey? Or are you the realist, the one who finally did the math, understood your own limits, and chose depth over breadth? Or maybe, and this is real, this happens, maybe you're more than one. Maybe you've been the watcher in one friendship and the changed one in another. Maybe you started as the realist, but the more you sat with it, the more you recognize the gatekeeper in yourself. These aren't rigid categories, they're mirrors. They're just ways of understanding something most of us have felt but never had the language for. Because here's what I believe, and here's what the psychology consistently supports. The people who go through this process, who shrink their circles deliberately, who choose quality over obligation, who stop maintaining relationships out of guilt and start investing in relationships out of genuine care, those people don't end up lonelier. They end up more deeply connected than they have ever been, because they stopped diluting what they have to offer. They stopped showing up as a tired, overstretched version of themselves to 20 people who get nothing real, and they started showing up as the full, present, invested version of themselves to the 5 people who actually know them, and 5 people who truly know you. 5 people who get the real version of you, who are chosen and choosing, who show up and are shown up for. 5 people like that is worth more than 100 names on a contact list you never open. It is worth more than any number of followers or group chats or connections, because at the end of the day, what we're all actually looking for isn't a bigger circle. What we're looking for is to feel genuinely known by someone, by a few someones, by people who chose us back. So if your circle has been shrinking and you've been carrying some quiet guilt about it, I want you to hear this. You're not failing at connection. You might finally be learning what it actually means to connect. Hit subscribe if this hit somewhere real for you, because this is what we do here. We take the psychology that actually explains your life, not the surface stuff, not the motivational posters, the real research-backed human stuff, and we break it down so you understand yourself better, so you can choose better, so you can build something real.